firstly, I'll give a bit of context. You speak about how love relates to lack in human beings, and Lacan talks a lot about lack. And you say beyond loving. So this is from your paper. You say beyond loving our own soul, or to put it another way, beyond loving our own unconscious. Lacan notoriously defines love as consisting in giving nothing of one has. To love is to recognize your lack and give it to the other. Love therefore approaches the being of the other from a standpoint of the nothing. And I thought this was such an important little excerpt, because if you look at our current, let's, for lack of a better term, say modern dating world, it's quite the opposite, isn't it? Because it's like you got dating apps. It completely commodifies a human being and puts a human being as if it's a competition between which is the best product on the free market, quote unquote. And I find that so tragic, because I love that Lacan says, love is giving your lack to the other and then accepting their lack. And there's something truly, for me, sublime in that. So anyway, before I get carried away, after reading that excerpt, firstly, I'd say, do you mind elaborating on what you meant by the idea of lack and how it relates to lack? But also, perhaps, maybe you could use this to critique what you think contemporary society gets wrong about love. Speaking generally, of course. Yeah.
So lack is a very important concept in psychoanalysis, particularly Lacanian psychoanalysis, because it goes to the internal space of the void or the abyss. So, we're all social beings, constituted in and through language, which affects our identity, our sense of self, our sense of belonging in any kind of given cultural realm of society, which is also, of course, affected by socio-historical, political, economic forces too. So we're very complex beings. But what Lacan and other philosophers are interested in is the actual realm of the singular being. And how do I know that? But knowledge in a more Socratic sense, that's about being with one's own being. And that lack is something that emerges out of the void. And it relates to desire, because Lacan was arguing that we don't desire that which we lack, which we don't lack. If we have everything we want in a particular realm, we might be satisfied and fulfilled for a certain period of time, but it flattens out desire. So for us to be continuously growing and learning and evolving spiritually, emotionally, humanistically, desire plays a really vital role as a life force within us, eros. Lacan means by desire the eros, to have purpose and meaning in life, aiming towards the good and the beautiful. Beyond ourselves, of course, but we need to deal with it in ourselves in order to generate and create a good and just and beautiful society. So, and that desire has to emanate from lack. It logically makes sense that you wouldn't really passionately desire something if you fully had it already.
Of course, yeah.
And so that desire emanates from lack. Another way of thinking about where lack comes from is referring back to the existentialists. So people like Kierkegaard and Jean-Paul Sartre, whereby it also comes out of Buddhism and Taoism, I think, whereby the lack within is really it's a game, it's a word game, because they all really, I think, essentially refer to the same internal dynamic, which is that there's a void within the self, or a lack, or a nothingness, what the Buddhists refer to as nothing.
I mean, Sartre's magnum opus was being a nothingness, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
so, but that also, existentialism demonstrate, they argue and show too, that there's a whole process involved in coming into being. Heidegger too that there's a lot of angst and anxiety, dread, horror, terror of coming into oneself, because we're thrown into the world.
Proneness.
Yes. And then with Heidegger, we really see that it's not just about being an Übermenschen, but with Heidegger, it's also about Sorge. So there's angst and there's Sorge, but we need to go through angst in order to get to Sorge, which is about care. Care for the other. So in many, one of my theses and my passions is to try and bring more phenomenology together with psychoanalysis, because I think psychoanalysis could do.
I think you're back, Dr. Grace. Sorry, it was probably from my end. You were saying that you want to bring together psychoanalysis and phenomenology, and that's where it kind of got cut off. And you said psychoanalysis could do, and you were cut off.
Oh, okay. So psychoanalysis, I think, brings to philosophy a whole process of, because philosophy deals largely with the conscious mind, but I do think seriously, there's an unconscious part of the mind that needs to be conscious.
So do I, yeah.
And we need to go through a whole process to arrive to continuously make the unconscious conscious. But also, it's not just about cognition, it's also about emotionally maturing and psychologically dealing with old dynamics to create more space for personal, romantic and social cultural relationships.
Yeah. I mean, just a side comment on that. I don't even think I take any philosopher seriously who doesn't incorporate some kind of the unconscious into the human subject, because it seems to be there's too much evidence now, especially in our times. So back to the idea of lack, Dr. Grace, though, I want to I'm sorry if I'm pushing you here, but I kind of want to use the idea of the lack to make more of a cultural and societal critique of let's say how in the modern world we view human relationships and love, and specifically let's say romantic relationships. And what do you think we get wrong, given that psychoanalysis and, as you said, Taoism, Buddhism has shown us that in the core of our being there's this nothingness, a void or a lack?
Okay, so I've only got a few minutes left, but I think it's really, really significant that what's even giving rise to a lot of this thought is the actual social historical conditions under which we're living in the 21st century. Particularly in relation, like for me, it's most evident at the level of mental illness, so-called mental illness, that there's never been the level of depression, anxiety, personality disorders, the level of psychosis and suicide ever historically. And yes, there's an argument that it just wasn't documented before, but no, there's too much evidence now to demonstrate that it's bound up with the period that we're living in. And we're living in a highly narcissistic period culturally. And that narcissism is born, I think it's not about blaming individuals as narcissistic. It's about like understanding how that narcissism in a secular world has been, or if you like, it's either secular or fundamentalist, is born out of intergenerational trauma and violence from the 20th century. And we know there's been a lot of violence throughout all of human history, but the 20th century, in which there were 2 world wars, the nuclear weapons now have become even more serious than even what they were in the 1980s. The whole question around gender and sexuality, what it means to be a man as opposed to a woman, what it means to create and generate family, spirituality, these have become extremely vague concepts, and people are really like wobbly. That there seems to be like no sense of how to be in touch with values. Where do values come from? Faith. How do I have faith in and have trust other human beings? Oh, I forgot another example: climate change.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, I guess now more more recently, the threat of artificial intelligence or artificial
AI. Yeah, exactly.
this brings up the question: what is a human subject? Given
Yes.
we have,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
I think we are at the crossroads, and what we're talking about now is super, super significant. And I think there's a zeitgeist.
interesting.
That's what
What do you
it
mean
gives
by
me. It gives me hope that there's a zeitgeist going on. Just the fact that you've contacted me,
that? Yeah.
you're actually one of the few people who've been contacting me in the last year or so, and there's more and more coming out in the psychoanalytic literature and in the phenomenology literature. I can't remember if I just mentioned to you a guy called Jean-Luc Marion.
No, you didn't mention this person.
What's going on in the realm of high level ideas in universities.
French philosopher Jean-Luc Marion. Never heard of him.
Jean-Luc Marion.
Thank you.
That he's written incredibly logical, dense books, but all are leading in this direction about the whole idea of the gift that Lacan was referring to.
Oh,
and
right.
Derrida wrote a book on the gift too, based on Heidegger's work, but Marion has taken it to the next level. He's our contemporary.
So you see what you're saying is, in many ways, the famous death of God that Nietzsche decried and said it's a terrible thing, right? He never celebrated the death of God. He said it's going to destroy our socio-symbolic order, our metaphysical understanding of the world.
Yeah,
But
sure.
through that death, it's like through the kind of so-called obstacle, there can be something new that comes out of it.
I think so. I think it's not religion per se.
Yeah.
I think, Nietzsche was onto something. In fact, one of my friends, a colleague, has written a book on nature and God in a way that isn't the traditional way in which Nietzsche's been received. I think he's really been misunderstood.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, especially by kind of like these like pop Nietzschean, just people who just quote just the God is dead. And in fact, are you familiar with the German theologian? Sorry, I know I'll just be mindful. 5 more minutes. The German theologian Paul Tillich, Dr. Grace.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in his book,
read
I love him. He's my favorite. I would say one of my favorite thinkers. In his book, Courage to Be, in the end, he says, "Well, we're currently, as you described, real well, we're in a meaning crisis. But then, when God dies, there's a new God that gets, in many ways, perhaps it's the God of the old that dies, but that doesn't mean the concept category of God dies for us human beings."
Oh, look, I think if you like Tillich, you will love Jean-Luc Marion. And it's not just Marion. He's working from the University of Paris and also La Sorbonne and also the University of Chicago. And there's like at least 50 people I know of who are writing books following Marion's teachings now. But it's not reaching out necessarily into popular discourse, but it will come. But it gives one a lot of hope. But Tillich was already writing similar stuff back in the 50s, 60s, I think.